Well, the Ford Motor Company is delaying the start of electric vehicle production at its plant in Oakville, Ontario by 2 years. The plant was slated to begin production in 2025, but it's now pushing that back to 2027. Some employees will remain on site during this time, but according to a company spokesperson, there will be layoffs. François-Philippe Champagne is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. Minister, thank you for joining us.
It's a real pleasure. We're still very excited from what we had just here in Montreal. As you can see, there's still a big crowd behind me.
Yeah, you're at an Eclipse event. That's why it's noisy. The Eclipse is gone. So I'm hoping, Minister, you might be able to shed some light on where things stand with Ford. You said you were going to speak to the company about their slowdown of things at Oakville. Have you spoken to Ford lately?
Yes, I did. And obviously, the first objective is to maintain as many jobs as possible, obviously. To shorten the period of time for the retooling. This is beyond what was said to us when we negotiated that. So there's going to be discussion. We're in touch also with Unifor, with Lana Payne. This is all hands on deck to make sure that we get the best possible outcome for the workers.
Have they given you any assurances on economic support, on financial support, and maybe on a shorter timeline to get the Oakville plant on stream?
Listen, we're going to have discussions with them. Obviously, you know, directionally, we all know we're going towards EV vehicle. Obviously, the speed at which different companies have taken different timeline. With Ford, we were very hopeful that this would be one of the first out of the gate. They're still very committed to the EV vehicle. We are too. But now we need to make sure that we look at opportunities to shorten the time for the retooling. So we're very focused on that. I had exchanged with the company. We're going to work with our Ontario colleague as well on that. But let's say that, you know, at this stage, we're still in the stage of discussions with them.
Okay, so it's not just the thousands of workers at the Ford plant in Oakville. There is a supply chain that is counting on this particular operation to get up and running. And we've spoken to players in the industry who are very worried about that knock-on effect in all of these supply industries that are going to rely on this. What does this say about the state of the EV transition in Canada?
Well, I would say you're quite right. It's the workers and it's the supply chain, because obviously the delay will have an impact on the supply chain. Like I said, directionally, we're going toward electric vehicle. I think everyone would agree on that. The speed at which it's going to happen, like I said, different manufacturers have different timeline. What we want to make sure is that, you know, with respect to Ford, that we can do that as quickly as possible so that the impact on the supply chain that they will need for the EV vehicle will have minimum impact. And that's really because they will need these suppliers. So they understand that. They need the talent of the workers. They've been very clear on that. I think Jim Fairley, the CEO of the company, said it. They realize that we have some of the best workers. The productivity at our plant is outstanding. They need to protect also that supply chain to make sure that when they go full EV, that these people will be there to support them. So they understand all that. Now it's how do we make the best out of that? This is not obviously something that we wanted or expected, but now that we have heard that, we're going to be working with the company, with the unions to get the best possible outcome for the workers. So
the companies are on their own timelines, Minister, but you have a timeline as well as a government. You set 2035 for the adoption of 100% of all light and medium vehicle sales in the country need to be electric. I mean, can those targets be met with what we're seeing in the industry, not just Ford, but writ large, with the slowdown in production and transition because of soft market demand?
Well, like I said, different companies are going at different speed, but they're all going in the same direction. That's the good news. But obviously, Ford, like all the other manufacturers, will have to meet the new standards that we have put together. They understand that. Like I said, now we need to take the decisions that they've announced, work with them to see if we can reduce the timeline for the workers, for the supply chain, because you know what? They'll need both the workers and the supply chain in order to be successful in this EV transition that they're going. They're committed to it. Right. We're going to hold them to that. And now, like I said, it's a matter of timeline that we need to make sure it's as short as possible so that they can preserve the talent and the supply chain they need in order to do that transition.
But for the larger picture of the targets that Canada has set for the adoption, the transition, all part of the climate plan to reduce emissions, even before Ford announced its delay, people like Brian Kingston from the Manufacturers Association were saying that your targets weren't realistic, they weren't achievable because of lack of charging capacity, lack of demand, lack of uptake, and now we have a supply challenge here. So could this force the government to reconsider its benchmark targets for the adoption of electric vehicles here in Canada?
Well, I would say that our targets are ambitious, as they should be. You know, when you want to move an industry in that direction, our target are aligned also with what you see in Europe. So manufacturers are going to adapt. They know that they have to take that EV transition. But like you said, I would not take the decision of Ford to be a reflection of all the industry, because as you've seen, we've got record investment in the country with respect to the battery supply chain. You've seen other manufacturers going faster. So I think this is a decision by Ford. The rest of the industry is moving as well in that direction. Obviously, you need to show a level of ambition to make sure that we move them in that direction. By the way, it's been the same thing when we were looking at fuel consumption before, when you were talking about combustion engine. You know, it's always government who have pushed the industry to do better, and I think that's what they didn't expect from us. But obviously, they have to be ambitious. We're going to work with the industry. We're going to work with Ford. But like I said, the destination is the same for everyone. There's no doubt that we're going to be going towards EV vehicle. Now it's about the speed at which we can achieve that target.
So one of the criticisms has been that there's just not enough charging capacity in Canada, not enough charging ports to meet the adoption targets that you've set. And Brian Kingston was saying you'd need to build 100 charging ports every day for the next 11 years to keep up with the targets that you have set for consumer demand. I know you're announcing a lot of things about the budget in advance of the budget. Are we going to see more money for charging infrastructure from the government to try to bridge some of this gap to keep those targets alive?
Well, one thing that I can tell you, we understand the challenge, because obviously if you're going to go towards EV vehicle, you need to have the infrastructure across the nation. We've done more than ever. The industry as well is with there. But I understand what you're saying. I understand what the industry, they said, obviously, we're going to produce the electric vehicle. In order to have adoption, you need to have charging opportunities. And that's something that I've been working with Minister Wilkinson to make sure that we have as many charging stations in the country. For what's going to be in the budget, I guess you'll have to wait until the 16th of April. But on the other hand, we're very conscious about what we need to do. And I think not only in Canada, but in Europe and other jurisdictions, we're going to that next step. And certainly we're going to be taking measures to make sure that we can favor adoption of EV vehicles so we can meet the target that we have set for the industry.
Okay, Minister, if I can just end this interview by bringing it back to where we started, and that's with the question about Ford. I know you say you've spoken to them and Unifor, and there's a lot of conversations that have to happen in the next little while. When do you think we'll get some clarity on how the workers will be looked after or not looked after, and whether or not the retooling timeline can be shortened as you hope?
No. Listen, workers always have to be front and center. In any discussion we have, it's always about the workers, about the talent. That has been clear from my first communication with Ford. Same thing with Unifor. So we're going to be working to make sure that we get the best outcome for the workers. With respect to timeline, we'll have to have these discussions. I can't tell you right now, but I can tell you that the workers, the supply chain is front and center in what we're talking with the company and with Unifor.
Minister François-Philippe Champagne, thank you for joining us, and thank you for doing this interview with Black Betty blaring in the background. Much appreciated, sir.
Yeah, listen, it's an historic day for all Canadians, at least. So sorry for the background noise, but I would say there's a lot of celebrating this eclipse here in Montreal. So happy to be with you on this historic day.